Welcome to Rainbow Resumes, supporting 2SLGBTQIA plus job seekers, a pre-recorded presentation prepared for Cannexus23. In this session, we will use community research and case studies to discuss the importance of applying inclusive, client-centered practices. This session is designed to help build career professionals' confidence with providing 2SLGBTQ plus informed services and where to go to learn more. My name is Bri Denicola, and I will be facilitating this session. Before we dive in, I'd like to introduce myself, my story, and what inspired me to create this session. I'm a proud queer and disabled professional who works and plays on the traditional territories of Mississauga and Haudenosaunee nations. At McMaster University, I am an education and career development researcher. It is at McMaster where I studied sociology at the bachelor's and master's level. When I graduated in the year 2020, the world had just gotten into lockdown for the first time. Graduating in the midst of a pandemic wasn't easy. Like many others, I took that time to reflect on my career. Also, like many others, I decided to go back to school. I determined entering the career development professional program would be an excellent way for me to bridge my previous experiences in career readiness and build new skills and counseling techniques. And it certainly was. We worked through the micro skills hierarchy, and I learned about the basic listening sequences for the first time. I got to practice different techniques with clients. We even talked about Brené Brown's work on empathy. However, working on my listening and empathy skills was not the only major outcome of my studies. I was surprised to discover how much more work this field needs to do when it comes to providing safer and informed services for my fellow queer and trans job seekers. I'll be honest, entering the career development field as a non-binary person was overwhelming. My first introduction to trans-specific career needs was riddled with inaccurate language and harmful advice. While reading through the contents, I felt anger, disappointment, fear. I quickly became concerned with how career professionals are serving their gender diverse clients like me. Since this discovery, I felt a certain sense of urgency, a purpose. I knew I wanted to focus my career on improving the conditions LGBTQ plus job seekers are receiving career support and information. But first, I needed to understand what's going on. And that's exactly what I began to do. Every chance I got throughout the program, whether it was a case study, developing a career source, or a workshop, I made sure my topic focused on analyzing and outlining the needs of 2S LGBTQ plus clients. I also found a part-time job where I was able to conduct community-engaged research on trans-specific needs and experiences. And more recently, I became a peer support worker for an LGBTQ plus helpline. Today, I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to share with you what I've learned so far over the last 2 years. Over the next 25 minutes or so, I will be guiding you through some considerations to keep in mind when supporting LGBTQ plus clients. To set a foundation, we'll identify some common employment challenges and barriers experienced by 2S LGBTQ job seekers. Then we'll discuss the importance of applying inclusive, client-centered practices. This is when I will introduce you to the term rainbow resumes. And lastly, I'll send you off with some resources you can add into your career toolbox and continue your learning outside this conference. These takeaway resources will be very important because the session is not meant to be a complete or exhaustive how-to list for supporting LGBTQ job seekers. Instead, we'll be starting the conversation on how to practice safer counseling by revisiting the client-centered technique. Now that you know what to expect, let's get started. To best serve your clients, it's important to understand their unique experiences during the job search process and in the workplace. Canada has a long way to go when it comes to capturing the experiences and labor market outcomes of 2S LGBTQ individuals. Despite the lack of high-quality data, we do know that LGBTQ job seekers commonly encounter significant challenges with accessing services, finding employment, and thriving in the workplace. I have found a few recurring themes across my exploratory research that I'd like to highlight for you today. I've categorized these findings into concerns regarding the access or opportunity for work and safety at work. The first listed concern I have here is hiring discrimination. Despite legal protections on sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression, discrimination and transphobia persists in the workplace and during the hiring process. In a recent 3-year study of 2SLGBTQ people living in Sudbury and Windsor, Ontario, over 13% of the participants reported that discrimination based on sexual orientation or gender identity had been a barrier to finding work. A similar study conducted across Canada stressed the importance of understanding discrimination from an intersectional lens. It found that 34 of its participants were concerned with experiences of discrimination on multiple aspects of their identity, such as intersections of ethnicity or disability. Experiences of hiring discrimination may lead to a client to feelings of discouragement and frustration. Some may reach out to you to discuss their rights. Others may want to explore strategies for finding more welcoming employers. And some may reach out to you just to seek some emotional support. Another experience commonly reported among trans and gender diverse job seekers are challenges pertaining to the required application material during the hiring process. More specifically, navigating dead names or legal names and sex markers. From the widely spread TransPulse study of 2011, 28 of trans Ontarians reported not being able to get employment references with their current name or pronoun. When it comes to applying for jobs and creating marketing materials, clients may want to consult with you on how to present themselves, to disclose or to not disclose, to show or remove work experiences that may out them. Later in the session, we will discuss how to support clients with these types of questions. Next, I'd like to chat about occupation stereotyping. Occupational stereotyping is when we make an assumption about an occupation and about the people who work in that occupation. A great example of how we commonly reinforce occupational stereotypes in this field is through our selection and interpretation of career assessment tools. Career assessment tools tend to be normed on binary gender groups and have gendered occupational associations. With this, it's important to review any questionnaires included in the tool and to not reinforce gender biases in your interpretation with clients. Career educators and career development professionals working with children or youth may find it particularly interesting to consider the impacts and prevalence of occupational stereotyping. It appears 2S LGBTQ students don't see themselves in a variety of occupations. We are experiencing a reinforcement of an occupation stereotype for LGBTQ people being limited to the arts. I mean, for decades, LGBTQ plus characters in film and media have been typecasted as the fashion designer, the drama teacher, or even the hairdresser. As a result, queer and trans job seekers may not see themselves represented in their desired occupation and may come to you not aware of the many communities and networks available to them in their industry. Many 2S LGBTQ people do not feel safe being out at work. In the study previously mentioned of people living in Sudbury and Windsor, Ontario, nearly half of the trans respondents expressed they feared that coming out or transitioning at work would mean losing their jobs. In the TransPulse study, 17% of transgender Ontarians reported declining a job they were offered because of a lack of a trans-positive and safe work environment. In the last Canadian survey of safety in public and private spaces, sexual minorities and transgender Canadians were more likely to report experiencing inappropriate behaviors in public, online, or at work than heterosexual and cisgender Canadians. In response to unsafe and unwelcoming workplaces, LGBTQ clients may turn to you for insights and support. Yes, career professionals are on the front lines of helping people find employment, but they also help people address workplace challenges and raise awareness of their rights. With this, career professionals are well positioned to assist LGBTQ individuals with navigating the world of work. Before we move on, I'd like to share with you this graphic that has been widely circulated across social media sites over the last few years. The image displays two pie charts. The first pie chart shows what people think trans issues are. It just says bathrooms and pronouns. The second chart shows what trans issues actually are. And then it proceeds to present a richer list of experiences and realities, including difficulty accessing legal documents with correct name and gender, homelessness, trans existence constantly being debated by others, and inaccessible mental health care. The image reminds us that trans-specific issues extend far beyond concerns of accessing washrooms and respecting pronouns. Like this image, I hope the brief introduction I provided to some of the common employment challenges broaden your understanding and encourages you to keep learning. Now that we have an idea of some common employment experiences, I'd like to introduce you to two important terms that ground this session. The terms are the client-centered approach and rainbow resume. If you're working as an employment counselor, you probably already heard of the client-centered approach. Client-centered counseling allows the client to lead the conversation and identify their own career choices. The role of the career professional is to encourage the client to reflect on their wants, needs, and values. Let's have a refresher on the do's and don'ts of client-centered career counseling. The client-centered approach engages in non-directive interviewing so that the client can become an equal partner in the process with you. This means you are now providing room for the client to guide the session. The best way to do this is to ask lots of open-ended questions. As a counselor, you're doing most of the listening and the client is doing most of the talking. In this approach, you want to keep in mind that your clients are the ones who know themselves best and have the best insights on their challenges and potential solutions. This means, as a counselor, you're not beginning a session with a fixed agenda and assuming all the control with the help of closed-ended questions. If you are doing most of the talking and engaging in advice giving, you're moving away from the client-centered approach and entering the role of a consultant or an advisor. In this session, we'll focus on how the client-centered approach can be a valuable technique when supporting your clients through their unique employment challenges. To demonstrate this, we'll apply a client-centered approach on rainbow resumes. Rainbow resumes. While beautiful and fun it may be, this is not a resume color-coded to look like a rainbow. It's a resume that has identifiers, such as work experience, that references two LGBTQ communities. Having these identifiers or a rainbow resume could out a candidate to a hiring committee viewing the resume. It is important to note before we move on that not all LGBTQ plus individuals have a rainbow resume. To give you an idea of what consists of a rainbow resume, I came up with the following examples. The resume includes one or more previous experiences that have a reference to serving LGBTQ plus communities in the job title or task. For an example, if you worked as an LGBTQ plus youth worker, or you founded a book club for trans and non-binary folks. Another example could be if you shared that you worked, volunteered, or are a member of an LGBTQ plus organization, such as your local Pride Community Center or Canada's LGBT Chamber of Commerce. Lastly, if you list pronouns that out you on your application documents, for an example, the use of they/them pronouns or multiple sets of pronouns. I have a rainbow resume. I include my pronouns, they, them, at the top of all my application documents. I like to make it clear to the employer that these are the pronouns I want them to use. If an employer chooses to consistently misgender me or use incorrect pronouns at the interview or over email communications, then I know this isn't the place I want to work at. I also include all my relevant experiences I've had working at or with queer-centered organizations. I choose to keep these experiences because my professional identity is largely intertwined with these experiences. I want to feel confident with bringing up my unique perspective and skill sets at an interview or on the job. If I'm applying to be a career counselor at a local employment center, I want to be able to talk about how I built my basic listening sequences skills while volunteering at a helpline for LGBTQ+ youth. I want to be talking about how I'm presented at Cannexus about supporting these types of clients. When I talk about my rainbow resume, it's important to catch on that this is a choice I make. These are my priorities and expectations for an employer. After running a risk assessment, I decided that it's important to me to disclose, that it will bring me closer to finding a work environment that values experiences I have. You may have noticed I just mentioned the word disclosure. Discussing a client's comfort zone with having a resume could out them is aligned with discussions of disclosure. Disclosing personal information is a personal choice. So what do you do if someone comes into your office with a rainbow resume? What if they ask you what to do? What is your role as a career professional? Over the last few years, I've come across a few schools of thought while reading reported experiences with career professionals and thought leaders sharing their opinions across popular blog sites and channels like LinkedIn. Some thought leaders encourage their clients to be authentic and to disclose their identity. They say it's a great way to find employment in an organization that is supportive and safer. This is very similar to why I chose to disclose. But other thought leaders recognize that not everyone has the privilege to disclose. As we previously discussed, various Canadian studies have found LGBTQ+ people often opt into concealing elements of their identity in order to avoid discriminatory experiences in hiring. And some professionals will even go as far as outright discouraging all of their clients from mentioning any connection to working with or identifying as a part of the LGBTQ community. The reality is, a lot of these narratives can be really harmful. It's not appropriate to advise all your clients that enter your office to come out to an employer, nor is it appropriate to tell someone to hide their experiences and ultimately their identity, because it's not really your place. And this is why I decided to use this opportunity to stress the importance of the client-centered approach. By going back to the basics, we can be reminded of why we should refrain from advice giving on how a client should present themselves during the job search process or in the workplace. It reminds us that if we do cave into advice giving, it could subject our clients to our unchecked implicit biases, or could put our clients at risk of unsafe conditions. The client-centered approach reminds us that we as career professionals should facilitate a space for the client to conduct a risk assessment and identify for themselves what they're comfortable with, to help them make their own career decisions and ultimately decisions that impact facets of their life, including their well-being. So if a client comes into your office to discuss how to navigate their identities during their job search, this is not an invitation for you to jump into advice giving. Instead, it's important to ask the client to reflect on the following question. Am I comfortable with disclosing with my future employer and professional networks? And for some, this question may be worded a little differently, such as, do I feel safe listing these experiences? To explore the answer, a variety of open-ended questions can be asked, such as, what are some of your reasons for considering disclosing or being open about your experiences? What are some of your concerns with disclosing and listing these experiences? These 2 questions are great. Instead of jumping into advice giving where you tell them all the reasons you think someone should disclose or not disclose, these questions let the client identify their potential reasons and concerns. If a client identifies concerns about safety in the workplace, that can be an opportunity to ask if they would be interested in learning more about their rights during the hiring process or in the workplace. Another question you may want to ask your client is to consider their support systems. Job searching and then adapting to a new workplace culture can be stressful and mentally draining. Ask them to tell you about the people in their life they can go to for social support before, during, and after the hiring process. You can also ask the client to reflect on how it would feel speaking to a hiring committee about these experiences. The last one may spark a conversation on the value they assign to being open at work. To think about, is it important for them or not to bring their lived experiences into their work and the workplace? If they are interested in finding community at work. Some people might not have that as a priority, and others may want that, but just never considered it, or even aware that they could have it, or where they can go to find these types of workplaces. Ultimately, your client must identify the risks, supports, and decide for themselves how they would like to proceed. These questions here can help you and your client work together on these concerns. Once you complete a risk assessment and your client has come to a decision, then what? For the next little bit, I'll cover some considerations for supporting your clients present their experiences based on their comfort level. If your client decides they are not comfortable with disclosing and openly discussing their work experiences that could possibly out them to an employer, what do you do? Do you tell them to delete those experiences? Well, whether a candidate spent 5 years or 3 months working in a community, that is a valuable experience and an opportunity where they develop skills and networks or accomplish tasks that they're proud of. The next few minutes, I'll briefly outline a few strategies for helping clients keep their valuable experiences without having to delete or be pressured to share personal information that they don't want to share with an employer. Meet Mateo. He recently graduated from ABC University with a commerce degree. He wants to create a resume where he can distribute across his network to find an internship in marketing. Because Mateo is in the early stages of his career and he spent the last 4 years as a full-time student, he has limited work experiences to present. However, Mateo spent an impressive 3 years working as an LGBTQ+ media coordinator at his university's Pride Center. Mateo is very proud of the accomplishments and skills he gained through this experience. He would like to present this on his resume. However, Mateo worked with you and he made the choice that he's not comfortable with possibly outing his sexual orientation with his network. In this scenario, Mateo does not necessarily have to choose between keeping or removing the experience on the resume. Instead, Mateo can make a few simple adjustments. An alternative way Mateo can present his experience is as follows. First, if the job title references LGBTQ in the title, you can simply edit it. Instead of LGBTQ media coordinator, he can swap it for content and media coordinator. A client can strategically edit their job titles. We know this, as long as it stays within the realm of their work. For an example, Mateo wouldn't recode LGBTQ+ media coordinator as human resources. Those do not fall within the same line of work. Second, if Mateo does not feel comfortable with sharing that he worked at the university's Pride Center, he can simply shorten it to the organization's title, ABC University. Next, Mateo can make a few changes to his job description. Instead of focusing on the organization's goals and target audiences, He can put the emphasis on the skills and accomplishments he made on the job. Not only will this avoid Mateo sharing information he doesn't want to share, but it also strengthens the quality of the resume. Lastly, after working on these revisions, Mateo may come to the conclusion that he doesn't want to include the experiences after all. A client might still feel nervous and uncomfortable about keeping their experiences and change their mind, and that's okay too. Now that we've discussed strategies for clients not comfortable with disclosing their sexual orientation or gender identity, let's talk about clients who are comfortable with sharing their experiences. If a client decides they are comfortable with disclosing and openly discussing their work experiences after the risk assessment, then it's important to support the client accordingly. Beyond helping your client with their resume, there are other supports, information, and resources you can offer to advance their next steps and reach their career goals. One overarching theme, many of these supports, are to get connected and build community. As previously discussed, trans and non-binary people frequently don't see themselves reflected in the workplace. Moreover, one gender's identity is one of many intersectional identities your clients may hold, such as race, age, and ability, which can impact their feelings of representation and belonging. One may have additional worries about being accepted, supported, and not tokenized in the workplace. If beneficial and desired by the client, reaching out to professionals and employers, especially those that they can see themselves reflected in, is a great strategy for your clients during their career exploration and job searching, as well as strengthening their overall sense of belonging. I can only speak for myself, but having the ability to speak to other people in my industry and within my community had a huge impact on my postgraduate journey. I was surprised how willing people were able to just connect with me and want to offer support. And despite my initial concern about how career professionals serving their gender diverse clients, it's comforting to know that there are amazing LGBTQ+ specific networks and community spaces available, as well as professionals like yourself who are dedicated to doing better. Queer and trans people deserve access to career services that affirm their identity. If you would like to learn more about resources and supports available to 2SLGBTQ job seekers, feel free to visit queerandcareers.com. This is an open access online directory created to assist queer and trans job seekers locate affirming career services and information, such as LGBTQ+ and industry-specific job boards, events, mentorship opportunities, labor market research, and more. The directory is meant to be a working and living space. This means I'd like to see new resources being added as they're found. There's a space on the site for folks to be able to subscribe or submit a resource if they think it should be added. I originally created this resource to help me track and learn about the resources I can access. Today, I hope it can be used to help other folks across the community access support that they need. But for now, I'd like to highlight one resource I highly recommend to the career professionals supporting their clients with rainbow resumes and similar career exploratory challenges. In consultation with members of transgender and non-binary communities, the University of Toronto has created a career guide titled Your Journey, a career guide for trans and non-binary students. The guide was designed for the intention to support trans and non-binary students as they apply for jobs by offering resources, considerations, and tips. While it is focused and written for university students in mind, I find it to be a very well-constructed and gentle guide that can be broadly helpful to LGBTQ job seekers. For those of you tuning in live from Cannexus, if you found this session helpful and would like to keep the conversation going, I'm happy to highlight another session that may be of interest to you. Today, Jade from Pride at Work Canada will be leading a live virtual session titled Hiring Across Spectrums, Supporting 2SLGBTQIA plus Job Seekers. In the session, they will also review some current barriers to employment, the legal rights of job seekers, and how to advocate for more inclusive work spaces. Now we've reached the end of the session. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to learn about Rainbow Resumes. I encourage you to embrace lifelong learning, and I hope you continue to invite and invest learning more about queer and trans people in your lives. Learning about the needs, rights, and experiences of queer and trans people will enrich your professional work. Honoring your clients' experiences and coming from an informed place does foster trust and strengthens your ability to genuinely support your clients. I said it before, but I'll say it again. Queer and trans people deserve access to safer career services that affirm their whole identities and experiences. If you have any questions or would like to learn more, feel free to contact me at queerandcareers@gmail.com. Connect with me on LinkedIn or visit queerandcareers.com. Thank you.